to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members present this evening are myself, Mayor Morrow, Council Members Burgoyne, Gearbaugh, Cybo Koenig, Rhodes, Roth, and Tahar. From City staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, City Superintendent Engineer Rubel, City Treasurer Bennett, Police Chief Rennick, Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Skull, DPW Director Fordyce, and our Legal Counsel, Mr. Smith. For the rest of you in the audience, we appreciate you being here this evening. If you please sign in the back, we would appreciate that. At this time, I would seek a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
Move to approve as submitted.
Thank you, Councilmember Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll dispense with that motion. And we have two presentations on the agenda this evening. The first is a 7th grade school water quality testing at Mill Pond and Curtis Park. Please, we welcome you this evening. You want us to pass those out? One for everybody? Okay. Thank you. This is their supplement here. One for each of you.
Test.
Hello, my name is Leanne Ream, and I'm a 7th grade science teacher here in Saline. Earlier in the year, we were fortunate enough from the Foundation for the Saline Area Schools, they funded a grant for us to take all 7th grade students down to the rivers in Saline to do water quality testing to evaluate the River Raisin watershed and its health. Following that, we analyzed the data. They wrote a lot, we discussed a lot, and then they actually took their engineering prowess to it and designed inventions to help with the pollution in our watershed. I just want to first start saying by how proud I am of these students and all of my students. All this work that you see, the PowerPoint, the report that you just got was written by 12 and 13-year-olds independently on their own, and it is remarkable. I'm so proud. They're going to start by introducing themselves.
Hi, I'm Frank. Hi, I'm Frank Krosky.
Hi, I'm Colin Clark.
Hi, I'm Tyler Traskus.
Hi, I'm Elliot Hill.
Hi, I'm Alexis Stern. Hi, I'm Emma King.
Hi, I'm Sloan Pepper. Hi, I'm Leah Lawson.
Hi, I'm Leah Keller.
There are many types of water pollution. First, non-point source pollution is mainly caused by ground pollution and surface runoff. It is when something indirectly dumps pollution such as lawn fertilizers and pesticides into a body of water. Other examples of non-point source pollution include conventional septic tanks and steam pipes. Water can also be polluted by point source pollution, which is the pollution goes directly from its source into the water.
In May 2014, the water treatment plant dumped 29,000 gallons of raw sewage into the Saline River. The sewage could contain bacteria and diseases which could affect animal survival. This is an example of point source pollution.
An example of non-point source pollution in the Saline River is agricultural runoff, which could be fertilizer or pesticides from local Saline farms. This surface runoff happens when there is precipitation and the water runs off to a lower elevation, which could eventually be a pond, river, or lake.
Students visited Mill Pond Park in Saline and observed much qualitative data or data relating to our 5 senses. One thing students observed was that there was soil erosion on the banks of the river. Sediment on the sides of the river can contain chemicals, and the water can erode at this sediment as the river meanders, which can pollute the water.
At the Saline River, we observed that at one end of the river, there is a storm drain that dumps water from the surface runoff, and at the other end of the park, there was a treated water drain that dumps clean water from the water treatment plant. This contributed to the varied results at different points along the river.
Another observation we made is the current construction at Houghton School. This could be a source of non-point source pollution because there could be sediment from erosion entering the river through runoff.
One qualitative observation that I made was that there were some dead animals in the river like crayfish and birds.
While wandering the river, more than a few times, my group and I almost stepped in goose and dog feces. You may think that the feces would just lay there, but surface runoff could carry them into the water. This could cause a rise of fecal coliform, which could affect the animal biodiversity for the worse.
Over the next few discussions, there will be some things that will be discussed repeatedly. 1. We ranked our river through different tests, 1 through 4. 1 being poor and 4 being excellent. 2. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is the difference of life or how many different species can survive in the river environment.
Well, at the river, we also took quantitative data. One thing we tested was dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen can affect the biodiversity of rivers and other bodies of water. Dissolved oxygen, or DO, is oxygen that enters water by things like waves, photosynthesis from plants, and the diffusion of air. Different species of animals need different levels of DO to survive, and cold water holds more DO than warm water. One way that DO can affect biodiversity, according to page 39 of Environmental Engineers, is that different animals need different amounts of DO to survive. Some animals, like trout and salmon, need higher amounts of DO to survive, and other species, like catfish and carp, need less DO to survive. So when DO levels drop, so does biodiversity, because less species can survive on the low amounts of DO. The data we took from the river tests show the water has a DO level of 8 parts per million and 88% saturation, which means the DO levels are a rank of 3, which is a good rank. Therefore, if DO levels are high, there will be a high biodiversity in the river. In conclusion, different levels of dissolved oxygen can affect the biodiversity in bodies of water.
We also tested pH in the river. pH is important to have in a river because it can affect biodiversity. pH measures how acidic or basic a substance is. At Mill Pond Park in Saline, the pH in the river Raisin has a rank of 3, which is a good rating on the scale of 1 to 4. In order for there to be a high biodiversity, the pH level must be between 6.5 and 8.5. In the river, the pH level was an 8. Thus, pH is essential for wildlife to thrive. Because if the pH became too acidic or basic, animals would not be able to survive. In conclusion, to make the water rich in wildlife, we need to take measures to keep the pH levels at appropriate levels.
BOD affects the biodiversity of the river.
BOD comes from plants in the river decaying and using oxygen in order to decompose.
At the river, on the day of the testing, the DO was at 8 parts per million. Then another water sample was put into tinfoil to prevent light from getting in. After 5 days, the DO of the water sample was at 4 ppm.
The difference of 4 ppm was caused by plants decaying in the water because of lack of light and carbon dioxide. The test resulted in a rank of 3. A river with no plant decay would not have any change in the DO, while a river with a change of 8 ppm would have a lot of plant decay and a ranking of 2. The river ranked a 3 because there was some plant decay, but not as much as a river with a ranking of 2. When plants decay, the DO decreases. If the DO level drops, the river loses biodiversity because the river cannot support animals and plants that require higher levels of DO.
In conclusion, BOD impacts the biodiversity of a river.
Phosphates are the amount of salt or ester in a substance. Phosphates are a great source of water pollution. When taking phosphate samples at Mill Pond Park, some of the students took the samples by a storm drain. These students discovered that the level of phosphates were high at about 4 parts per million, which ranked at 2, which was fair. While the students tested phosphates at the other side of the pond, near a clean water filter, the results showed 3, which was ranked good, at about 2 parts per million. These tests showed that the things that are being released from the storm drain are affecting the water's health. Phosphates can also affect the biodiversity of the water by growing too much algae and bacteria that can bother the water's animals. Septic tanks, lawn and garden fertilizers, agriculture runoff, waste from water treatment plants, and detergents were a prime source of phosphates.
Nitrates are a problem in the Saline River as well as phosphates. A reading taken near the treated water results in 0 parts per million, while a reading taken near the storm drain indicated the amount of nitrates in the Saline River is at 20 parts per million, which is right at the verge of the river's health declining. When the amount of nitrates reaches about 20 parts per million, parts of an ecosystem start to become unbalanced. Nitrates can affect the biodiversity as well. Some plants, such as algae, use phosphates and nitrates as food. If there is a high level of chemicals, then the amount of plant growth will increase, which can increase the BOD because plants require oxygen to decompose. This can drastically decrease the amount of DO available for organisms to use. As different types of animals require different amounts of DO, lowering DO levels can decrease the number of organisms that can survive in the river.
Turbidity affects biodiversity in a river.
Turbid water is murky, not clear, and muddy because of suspended solids. A river that is very clear has a low turbidity, while a murky river has a high turbidity.
At the Saline River, the turbidity ranking was found to be 0 JTU. This is a ranking of 4. This means that the water is clear. Other tests at the river show the turbidity as greater than 0 to 40 JTU, a ranking of 3. This means that the water is relatively clear.
These two tests are different because of the locations where the water samples were gathered. A river with a higher turbidity is darker in color. This means the water absorbs more energy, causing the temperature to rise. This decreases the DO when the DO decreases, the biodiversity decreases because the river cannot support animals or other types of life that require higher levels of DO, such as trout, salmon, caddisflies, and mayflies.
In conclusion, turbidity affects biodiversity in a river.
After analyzing the result of the fecal coliform test in the Saline River, the students have determined that the health of the river for the fecal coliform test is not good. The reason that they have determined this is because the students incubated the river water with a fecal coliform tablet for 48 hours. After performing this test, the test tube turned yellow, which indicated that the test is positive for fecal coliform. A negative reading would have resulted in the test tube turning red. Fecal coliform comes from the feces of humans and warm-blooded animals. The way that fecal coliform can get into the river is by sewer overflows, leaking septic tanks, sewer malfunctions, contaminated storm drains, and animal feedlots. This affects biodiversity because when fecal coliform is in the river, bacteria and diseases such as E. coli are present as well. In turn, the biodiversity of the stream could decrease. In conclusion, the level of fecal coliform in the river needs to be taken care of.
The temperature in the river raisin watershed indicates that the river is in good health. Having good temperature is important because it affects the dissolved oxygen. Water can hold more oxygen. Colder water can hold more oxygen than warmer water. Low dissolved oxygen can cause oxygen-sensitive species to die. Many fish need constant temperature and dissolved oxygen to survive. The change in the river was 2 degrees Celsius, which earns it a ranking of excellent. If the difference would have been something like 10 degrees Celsius, then it would have earned a ranking of poor. In conclusion, the temperature of the river basin watershed indicates that the river is in good health.
Engineers solve problems. They combine science, technology, and engineering and math to create solutions to real-world problems. After testing the water quality of the Saline River, the environmental engineers in Miss Ream's 7th grade class developed invention ideas that could solve some of the pollution problems occurring in the watershed. These inventions ranged from filters to cooling mechanisms for power plants. In creating inventions, engineers must consider environmental and economic constraints. Therefore, creating solutions to problems, the students consider not only the benefits of the technologies they created, but the short and long-term consequences as well. Students used a program called AutoCAD Inventor to draw their invention in and create a 3D model of it. The
battery on the laptop just died. So he was about to describe that filtering device that I hope everyone saw up on the screen before it died. You can go ahead and describe it.
The filtering device would, you saw on the screen, would filter out phosphates and nitrates, keeping the water clean.
And that is the conclusion of their presentation.
Very good. Well, let me just say, first of all, I'm very impressed that you all and your teacher came to visit us on, has it been a week since school let out? So I'm very impressed that you're here on your summer vacation, because I can assure you 15, 20 years ago I wouldn't have. So that's indicative of how seriously you took this initiative. This is an excellent analysis and report. In fact, it's so excellent I'm gonna have to go home and plug some of the words into Google, because I have no idea what they mean. Yeah. But you are excellent writers, and you know this initiative that you undertook, it's very important. And here at the City of Saline, we take the preservation of our environment and our water very seriously. And it's good to know that our water's clean, but it also is good to know that we've got some work to do, and we appreciate that. I believe that Cheryl Heff from the Foundation for Saline Area Schools is here, and also Steve Lotch, the Assistant Superintendent of Instruction. So thank them. I want to thank them for participating with you all. Yeah. Allowing this to happen. That's great. I really think this is a terrific, and keep up the good work. Yeah.
Thank you for letting us.
I'm going to open it up. There might be some other comments and questions from my council colleagues. Mr. Rhodes.
I just wanted to mention that the Environmental Commission and the Riverways and Watershed Council were very excited when we came across this effort that was going to be put on by the 7th graders. And my understanding is that this will be an annual event, and so trend patterns will be able to be established. We can see if we're helping or hurting our precious Saline River. And the certificate was presented to each of the students who participated, declaring that they were honorary environmental engineers, and we thank them for your efforts, and y'all did a great job. Thank you.
Ms. Tahar, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, thanks very much. This is a great project. Good job on the presentation, all of you. And I just wanted to say I was fortunate enough to be able to see this information presented to the River Basin Watershed Council and a couple of members of the Environmental Commission a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. I tagged along, and I mentioned it to a friend of mine who is the the rain garden coordinator for Washtenaw County in the Washtenaw County Water Quality Office, and she was very excited to learn about the work and is interested in learning more. So you may be hearing from her.
Mr. Burgoyne.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you that I wasn't anywhere near this advanced when I was in the 7th grade. I have an engineering degree. So you guys are way ahead. Saline schools are great. You guys are doing a great job.
Please, Ms. Sabatini.
I'm so impressed by all of you and to come during summer, but I don't want to downplay Mrs. Ream's role in this for allowing you to explore this in such depth and for encouraging you to use sort of all of your senses and all of your knowledge to engage your environment and your community. Ms. Ream is a very special teacher, as are all of our teachers in Saline. Just want to commend you. Thank you.
Now you can go enjoy your summer, okay? Thank you again for being here. Let's give them one more round of applause.
Great kids. Yeah. It's tall, some of those are, it's like cheese. She's getting bigger in some
Be interested in them checking further south.
Blew something past
Past the sewage plant to see what we've done to it, if there's any change.
And it was just sort of low. Yeah, that's great.
But yeah,
Okay, moving on the agenda this evening, we have, per Mr. Campbell's weekly communique, we have an update on 207 Monroe Street. I don't believe that Darby Colano is here, but her colleague Rick Magnum, I believe, is here. Rick, if you'd like to come forward, we would welcome some comments, and we'll open it up for questions then.
Thank you. They're a hard act to follow. Darby was presented just 2 weeks ago when the council last met, and I wanted to build on her presentation and close by asking you to consider a specific change. We've been at this 9 months almost exactly, and we've had some good discussions. We got to one written letter of intent, but we don't have a serious discussion going at the moment to purchase the land. I think when we started this that we meant to include everyone. Who's ever can do something with the land within the zoning context, we'd like to hear about it and talk with you. But the number doesn't work for the low-density builder. So we really aimed in the listing, we aimed it at the high-density builder. And we had an example of that with the letter of intent, and just that was going on 2 weeks ago. And let me just comment a little bit on that. That was an experienced assisted living for seniors development company. They've done things in other states, only once, one other place in Michigan, but they were a company worth talking to. They started out pretty good. They, for instance, they offered list price, $275,000. After that, it kind of went downhill. I think the biggest thorn in the whole thing was that they seemed to want to live here and not pay taxes like everybody else. So I understand that that wasn't going to go over very well. They also withdrew their offer or their letter of intent a few days later because they were dependent upon federal financing. And I don't know if you heard about this, but the company that they were going to receive financing from has something they call a walkabout score. And so this site didn't qualify because it wasn't within a 2-block walking distance of 40 businesses. So that's, you know, I don't know if they represent every high-density developer, but they wanted to bring 50 units to this site, to this less than 4-acre site. Maybe we could have negotiated that down a little bit, but anyway, they went away because they don't have financing. So we have had some good discussions with several smaller builders, an architect, and I think there's others out there that are looking at us, and they just haven't come forward, but they're looking at us. If we had staked the place out, I think we would have found people periodically pulling on and walking about and giving the place a look over. Over time, it's become apparent that what we have is a real difference of value depending on whether you're a high-density user or a low-density user. So hindsight is very good. The high-density users are going to probably have a longer timeline. They're probably going to be less acceptable to the immediate neighbors, so that might generate more criticism. They're going to put more traffic down there, but they can afford to pay a higher price. There's fewer of them. My thought to you is engage the market for a lower density user. Someone who's going to do a single family home project, 6, 8 homes. That's about all you can get on this if they're single family homes. Or maybe a small condo development. We can get more units on it with that, 12 to 16 maybe. The low density builder user is looking at high infrastructure costs, and so each unit is, per unit is cost per unit are higher than the high density guy. And a couple builders have taken me through how they look at value, and they start with, well, what can I put there that people will buy? What's it cost me to put it there? What's my infrastructure costs? How much profit do I need to be interested in this? And then what's left is what I can afford to offer to the person that owns land. So it's a mathematical formula. Two of the builders have stated they would not build condos there because there's a problem with condo financing for the end users that doesn't exist for single-family homes. I've talked to lenders, and there's another builder who doesn't necessarily think that way, and so I don't know what we wind up with, but my thought to you is we're not engaging the market right now for the low-density builder the way it is. And so I'd like to ask you to consider dropping your price to $200,000. Another aspect that we've heard from people is that they need it to be easier. There's 2 buildings on there that need to be taken down. That's an issue for potential builders. What about a phase 1? We don't have one. Do we need one? Well, the low-density builder is a small operation, and they're concerned about risk. And a phase 1, I don't think would be that costly. I think you'd get a clean bill of health, and it instills confidence in that person that's considering the land. So I'd like you to think about doing those things. Do people have comments or questions of me?
But before I open it up for questions, Rick, and I appreciate your analysis and your thoughts. So what you're proposing to City Council this evening is to consider 3 things. One would be reducing the listing price,
Yes.
performing a phase 1 environmental, and considering demolishing both the barn and the home that currently exist on the site.
Correct. The last 2 would be fitting into the category of making it easier, shovel ready, that kind of thing. And also, we're noticing that people, they got a lot going on. And so to really get their attention, you've got to get their attention with something that, so you take the extra step. The phase 1 would be an extra step, for instance.
Right. All right, before I open it up to see if there's consensus from council, are there any questions for Rick? No questions? All right, well, we can start maybe developing some consensus. And conversely, if council members want additional time to think about this or to gather more information, that would be perfectly acceptable as well. Mr. Burgoyne.
I'd prefer having a work session at our next meeting. We're having a 10-minute meeting on the 30th. Why not just add a work session at the same time and take care of this? Because I think that to come to a decision without deliberation. I don't think that's the right approach. We should talk about it amongst ourselves and ask questions back and forth and just do it the right way instead of this.
I would be perfectly happy to assist in coordinating that. I think that's a fine idea. What is the consensus of the rest of council? Mr. Rhodes.
I would support that also. I'd like to do that. And I thought we had a phase 1 done when we purchased that property.
We did with Jeff helped me out. Tri Media was but it's only valid for a year or two, so we'd have to renew it. And also we didn't get it complete because those 4 adjacent parcels that have now been placed on it, those were not at the time included, but we did get a quote somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 for the phase 1.
Okay.
Mr. Burgoyne?
You know, in terms of risk, you can go for 100 years and that property is not going to change unless something really bad happens to it. So if technically it ran out, but you have the piece of paper that it was clean a year ago, the buyer's not going to care.
I didn't realize that you had a partial.
That's just a technicality.
I didn't realize you had a partial done, so.
It's a partial over most of it.
Over most of it, yes.
Yeah, so it's no big deal. I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing is the price and the buildings, well, we've just heard that that's the anecdotal conversation we've gotten back from people is this is complicated, so they just want to start to dig a hole.
Yeah. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, I'm fine with going ahead and having a discussion. And actually, the issue with the house was a flip of a coin because we were recommended that we shouldn't tear it down because we thought maybe somebody might want to restore the barn and stuff too. So I'm fine with the idea of removing that kind of building to improve the saleability of this land. So.
Okay, so we have a special council work meeting. Is it the 30th, Clerk Royal? Yeah. It's currently scheduled for 7 p.m. There's going to be 2 items on the agenda. One that I think will generate some discussion. One that I doubt will. But per Mr. Burgoyne's request, which seemed to be supported by myself and Councilmember Rhodes and Gearbaugh, maybe have a work meeting prior to the start of the 7 p.m. work meeting. Is 6 too early for everyone?
Yes. I can do that.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Mr. Roth?
It's okay.
Okay. Ms. Tahar?
Yes, okay.
Ms. Seibo-Koenig? Mr. Burgoyne? Okay, so 6 p.m. We'll allot about an hour to discuss this matter. Perhaps staff could get some quotes on what it would cost to do an additional environmental, if that's the consensus of council. And then additionally, what would the approximate cost be to levy both the barn and the home? Okay, Mr. Burgoyne?
And I assume you'll have an action item on the agenda at 7 o'clock.
We could, yes. We can have that.
For consideration.
Yep, we can have that supplemental prepared. Rick, would you be able to be present at that meeting, either yourself or your colleague Darby?
Sure.
Okay. So that's 2 weeks from today,
That's for
6
your
p.m.
work meeting?
It's a work meeting, yep. You wouldn't need to stay for the regular meeting if you didn't want to.
So the work meeting at 6?
At 6, right here in council chambers. Okay?
You betcha.
All right. We'll consider it scheduled then, my friends. 6 p.m. prior to our special meeting to discuss the Monroe Street property.
Okay.
Great. Please, Mr. Rhodes.
One thing I just wanted to mention, I went on the Reinhardt site the other day, and I tried to find Monroe Street. I looked under vacant land, it did not show up. I finally ended up finding it by putting in the actual address, and then it was listed under 26 pages of properties that I had to scan through. Is there some way to bring it up easier, put it other places or something?
Well, the websites are works in progress constantly, so I'm going to try to repeat your steps and see, and try to follow it the way you follow it. See what you saw and see if we can make an adjustment. So.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
People are finding us, though. I mean,
good. Okay, Rick. Mr. Burgoyne, I'm sorry.
Additional question. Do you have it on CPIX and LoopNet?
It's on CPIX, yes.
CPIX is the
Yeah.
biggest one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
We good. Okay. We will see you then in 2 weeks, 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate the information this evening.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. At this time now we move on to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess, and the comment on the Monroe Street property, I would hope that they would have a surety bond, whatever you do, we've had some real fiascos with the property by the Monroe Street that they're gone, the hole in the ground affectionately on US 12. And I think if there is work, that there should be a surety bond on behalf of the citizens of Saline, their insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items? There are none. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion. Is there a motion?
Move to approve as submitted.
Thank you, Councilmember Rhodes. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Is that
Yes.
correct? Thank you, ma'am. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business, item 14-131. This is Max Kelly's Eagle Scout project at the depot. Perhaps Max can come up and present his proposal prior to council entertaining a motion to approve or not to approve. Max, we appreciate you being here this evening.
Okay, so basically the project will be a 10-foot by 10-foot shed at the railroad depot. It'll be just barely onto the new Bennett Street property that was just bought at the last council meeting, I think. So it'll be 10-foot by 10-foot. It'll house the Velocipede, which is a little man-powered maintenance vehicle. The shed will hopefully have barn siding. It'll be painted the same color as the livery barn down there. We'll put wood shingles on it. The floor will be crushed limestone. We'll have a rail system, probably like signposts on 6x6s in the ground that'll lead out to the tracks. And then, so you can roll it out to the tracks and just turn it, and it'll be on the tracks. So we went to Chelsea Lumber, and they gave us a quote of about $2,200. Which doesn't include our crushed limestone, which will probably be about $100. And then hopefully we'll be building in late July into August. And I think that's it. You have anything?
No, you should do well. Well, appreciate you being here. Are there any questions? Mr. Rhodes?
More a comment than a question, and that is that the Historic Society has wanted to have a storage location for that beast for a while now. I've participated a couple of times along with Mr. Clements here in trying to get it up onto the track, and it's a little cumbersome, so I very much appreciate the fact that you're willing to do this.
Any other questions? Mr. Burgoyne?
Yeah, so will that Velocipede be able to get onto the tracks from this storage area?
It'll be able to roll out to the tracks. It's right now you have to carry it all the way from the barn, so it won't be able to go. It won't be able to like roll itself onto the tracks, but you can get it right to the edge of the tracks and just lift it on.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions? Max, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your interest in doing this. I do want to echo Councilmember Rhodes' comments. I'm sure that this will be invaluable to the Historic Society. It's a good addition to that property. And Wayne, appreciate your cooperation on this as well. Thank you, sir. All right, we'll entertain the motion now. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 10th, 2014 memo from Eagle Scout Max Kelly and to approve or not to approve an Eagle Scout project at the depot to build a shed to house the, what is that word? Velocipede. Okay.
Motion to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Second. Seconded by Councilmember Roth. Any discussion? No? Okay. Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you again for being here. Appreciate it very much. We move on to new business item 14-132. Please bear with me because this is a rather protracted motion. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 29th memo from Picnic in the Park and the application for community event / use of public ways for Saline Summerfest. To acknowledge receipt of the June 4th, 2014 email from Police Chief Rennick, the June 11th, 2014 email from Fire Chief Heft, and the June 11th, 2014 memo from DPW Director Fordyce. to approve or not to approve the 2014 Saline Summerfest event downtown on August 8th and 9th, utilizing city parking lots 1 and 4, with the relocation of Farmers Market to parking lot number 2 on August the 9th, as well as using and/or closing public ways as described in Exhibit B. To approve or not to approve the beer and wine tent to be located in parking lot 4 with licensing by the Saline, Michigan Picnic in the Park, with set approvals for the event subject to the following. 1, that the traffic engineer issue the required temporary traffic control orders for the street closings. 2, that the required permit to close the left turn lane on US 12 at Ann Arbor Street be obtained by MDOT. 3, that the certificate of liability insurance and liquor liability insurance be provided by the Saline, Michigan Picnic in the Park, with the city as an endorsed additional insured party, and that all fees for city services for this event above normal time, estimated at $4,243, be waived. Is there a motion?
Move to approve and approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig. Is there anyone here to present on this issue? It's pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I'd ask. No? Okay. Are there any questions from council? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just curious, I know they're going to have a new teen event where they're going to actually move it down onto the Trinity Lutheran Church parking lot, and there's additional police. How much different in cost is this from last year to this year? Anything much, or any idea?
You able to comment on that, Chief Rennick?
It's not much different, but I would have to go to the computer to check.
Okay. I didn't know if we had a significant more, because we're going to have to double down on police officers.
It was not significant.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Rhodes, did you have a comment or question, sir?
A comment, and that is that I really like this event, but I'm wondering if it's almost beginning to get too big to have in our downtown. We're talking about closing off access to some of our merchants all day Friday, all day Saturday, a little bit of Sunday. And that's a big hit for some of our merchants to have to take. So in the future, I'd like to begin to think about maybe parceling this out over various areas in town.
Okay, very good. We can make note of that and have subsequent discussions for 2015.
Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Burgoyne?
Just commenting on that, maybe Henny Field would not cause the same disruption.
Certainly an option worth looking at. Any additional comments or questions? Mr. Roth?
I was just wondering if you used the term as picnic in the park, could we come up with maybe perhaps the name change for them to be more specific to this event? It's a carryover for history, but just wondering at some time it could change.
Yeah, I believe that's the name of their technical name of their organization.
Okay.
Yeah. And we really call it Saline Summerfest, don't we, basically?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, it's been properly moved by Councilmember Rhodes, seconded by Councilwoman Cybo Koenig to approve and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business item 14-133. This is fees for unprocessed biosolids. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 10th, 2014 memo from Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Skull and to approve an award or not to approve the contract for filter pressing and disposal of 550,000 gallons of unprocessed biosolids, to Senegro Midwest in the amount of $76,000. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Burgoyne. Mr. Skull, do you care to comment, sir?
Just real quickly. This is material that we collected over the term when the digester was down during construction. And the only way to, since it's not Class B biosolids, we can't land apply it like we normally do. So this is probably the most efficient way of getting rid of it.
Are there any questions for our wastewater treatment plant superintendent, Mr. Skull?
Just real quick.
Mr.
So we're
Gearbaugh,
done. We're online now treating sewage, or
We are.
Okay.
We just don't have any place. And theoretically, we could process this if we had extra storage space. We have no place to put it while it's being, after it's treated, but before a land-up application.
This takes care of everything. So once
Yeah.
it's done, we're clear. Got it.
Additional questions? Comments? No? Why don't you stay put, because you're up next for the subsequent motion as well, Bob. Then if there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Burgoyne to approve an award. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 14-134. This is design and bidding services for wastewater treatment Phase 2 rehabilitation projects. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 10th memo from City Superintendent Engineer Rubel and Wastewater Treatment Plant Superintendent Skull, and to approve or not to approve the Tetra Tech proposal in the estimated amount of $215,000 for design and bidding services associated with Phase 2 improvements at the Saline wastewater treatment plant. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Gentlemen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Brian Rubel is here to represent Tetra Tech's proposal. You're well aware, if you read the memo, there's a synopsis of what has transpired in the past year regarding moving forward on Phase 2. Bob could tell you right now, we're nearing almost the final month of Phase 1 completion, and he could probably give you some more details on that. The proposal for Phase 2 is in keeping with both the project plan and the budget and achieving the goals established by the project plan for completing at least 3 phases of improvements. Phase 2 actually combines 2 and 3 because of the expedient need to address the problem with the filtration system, the tertiary treatment, sand filters. So with that in mind, we have decided, and as was mentioned in the work meeting, there's an economy of scale. If we obtain SRF funds, there's economy of scale through the bond as well as through the bidding to achieve all the additional work combined, Phase 2 and 3, and certainly Tetra Tech is willing to incorporate those together for both design services and eventually construction services. With that, if there are any additional questions, Mr. Rubel will probably be able to answer those.
Any questions? Mr. Rhodes?
Will this complete the design of all of the anticipated improvements with wastewater treatment?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Roth?
I was wondering if it's going to include cleaning up some of the leftover stuff that's there that's not being used.
I believe there is money in there to get rid of certain decommissioned pieces of equipment.
And I'd sure like to see that area cleaned up.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, just regarding the structural improvements, it says including fencing. Have we determined where that's going to be funded from? Because that's not going to be part of any kind of loan. Remember, there were certain things that we said that were identified that were supposed to be removed, I guess, after they reviewed the...
I'm sorry, was the question, would it include the new fencing?
Well, it says in here, including fencing, so...
The design work will include specifying a fence on the unsecured side of the plant, yes.
Okay, even though we haven't identified what's going to fund that yet.
Mr. Campbell might be able to provide some context on that, Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall that is one of the purpose for the special meeting on the 30th is to have an amendment, because there's a total of 3 items that needed to be, that MDEQ is requiring to be amend the plan, and the fencing is one of those 3, and then the primary clarifier, and the third one escapes me. Oh, the building at the septic receiving. So those 3 items, they went back and forth, but essentially they need to be amended, go through the official process, and that's why the special meeting on June 30th.
So those will be added in to be included as part of the project?
Correct.
In consideration, okay.
Correct.
I was thinking they had to be taken out, my mistake. The other item, it says here, I just happened to read it, it says refurbishing the odor control system to make it operational again. Is it not working right now?
No, it's operational, it's just reaching it into its life. It's made out of a Schedule 80 PVC material, and the chemicals we add are fairly harsh on the plastic, so it's within a 2000, so it's pretty much getting brittle. It still functions, everything's still going through it, but it's going to need to be addressed.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure because I've had some individuals concerned about the smell lately.
Well, hopefully the biosolids getting rid of that will help.
Good. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Burgoyne?
This is Phase 2, and Phase 2 is about $3 million, right? And we've applied for the low-cost loan. We didn't get it in the first round. Is that what we didn't get in the first round?
Yeah, no. You didn't actually go forward with the loan request last year. You paid for the Phase 1 out of cash reserves.
Right.
I think maybe you might be referring to the SAW grant.
Oh, okay. That was for
separate type of a
Okay,
activity.
that's for long-range planning. and-
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
No, okay, so the SAW grant, we did not get in the lottery. We didn't win the lottery for that.
Not yet.
And we've got another chance at that as that goes along. And this $3 million low-interest loan, are we fairly certain that we know when that will be approved? Or do we think that might get bumped?
The schedule is fairly well prescribed with that. The hearing will be on the 30th. We owe them a copy of the resolution that you pass by the following day. Some materials will follow in the next week or so, and by mid-August, you will know your status of that application.
So we will know if we get it by mid-August?
That's correct.
And if we don't get it, how much into the future does it get bumped?
They publish the priority list annually in August. So should you not make fiscal year 15 funding, you will be reconsidered in fiscal year 16.
And you move to the first of the line because you applied earlier?
I do not believe a past application gets you extra points on their scoring criteria.
It's all random.
The fact that you did a project last year does, though. So you're, in their view, you're continuing a larger project, and that does get you priority points.
Okay.
So
good.
As we went through in the meeting, you had a fairly good point score in last year's ranking. I would expect your place to be very, very much the same this year.
Any additional questions or comments? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. If there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by Tahar to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on now to what hopefully will be a brief closed session. I'll entertain a motion at this time to convene into closed session to consider materials exempt for discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, in particular for the purpose of conducting a personal evaluation of the city manager, which is requested closed session by the city manager, and city council will reconvene into regular session at the conclusion of the closed session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Rhodes to convene into closed session. Is there a second? Is that Mr. Burgoyne?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That motion will be entertained. The clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Rhodes?
Yes.
Councilmember Terhar?
Yes.
Councilmember Gerbaugh?
Yes.
Councilmember Seibel Koenig?
Yes.
Councilmember Roth?
Yes.
Councilmember Burgoyne?
Yes.
Mayor Morrow?
Yes. We are adjourned to a closed session at 8:23 p.m. By Councilmember Roth. The clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Rhodes?
Yes.
Councilmember Terhar?
Yes.
Councilmember Gerbaugh?
Yes.
Councilmember Seibel Koenig?
Yes.
Councilmember Roth?
Yes.
Councilmember Burgoyne?
Yes.
Mayor Morrow?
Yes, and we are reconvened into regular session at 8:39 p.m. We move on now to staff appointments and contracts for fiscal year 2014-2015. This is a series of 5 motions, the first of which will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 10th, 2014 memo from City Manager Campbell regarding annual non-union staff contracts.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Burgoyne. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Seibel Koenig. City Manager Campbell, do you care to go over your memo at all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pretty short and to the point. It reflects City Council's intent, wanted to reflect for non-union, reflect the recent collective bargaining agreements with a 2% COLA as well as steps or merit bonuses, which of course, if you may recall, a merit is what the term we use in the non-union folks as opposed to longevity that we use for the collective bargaining units. So those have been budgeted with the 2% and either step, or if you're stepped out, then merit bonus.
Are there any comments or questions for City Manager Campbell? Mr. Gearbaugh?
A couple individuals. Kathy Korfman, on hers it says grade 1, step 9, and grade 1, step 9 on her 2014, and yet she has a step increase.
She is it's the 2% plus merit is what that is for her.
So looking at what I had assessed on it, looking pretty consistent, there was everyone that went up had a step increase, and anyone that was fixed that didn't have a change stayed at just a cost of living increase. I didn't know why hers was different.
Anybody that would qualify for a merit would receive a merit.
So Ms. Scruggs, Robert Skull, Mark Fetchick, Catherine Skull, Tillman Taylor, Justine, and Joyce did not qualify?
They did.
Only received a 2% increase based on the numbers that you presented in the group.
Yeah, they should be included.
Because I'm looking at, well, what I did an analysis and looked at the different changes for everyone, and based on, there's the ones that are all at the same step received only a 2% increase, the only exception being Kathy Korfman, who received a step increase but stayed at the same step. All the other individuals received above that, basically received basically a 5 to 8% increase.
It looks like an error. Typo.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers we have, but.
Yeah.
She might have printed something else out.
No, I don't think
Oh, that's the handout that was in the actual. This is something I did myself, an analysis. But what I'm questioning is that who's getting merit, who's getting steps, and who's getting cost of living. And when I look at the individuals that are on this, I have a concern of a couple individuals not getting any increases based upon their positions. But I also have a concern about some of the individuals that are receiving a 5% increase compared to the others.
Well, again, those that are stepped out, and I apologize.
Yeah, the step out things where part of my concern is, and where the other ones have continued to increase on their steps, I'm not so sure that some of those steps are warranted at this time.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that the 2%. Again, this is what we've done in the past, of course, but
Yeah, I know we've
so
done this in the past.
2% plus either the step, or if you're stepped out, which Kathy is stepped out, then she would qualify for her merit. So everybody else that are stepped out would also qualify for the 2% and their merit.
If these are the numbers we're going to publish, then we don't really have a merit in here, because the 2% you're saying is a cost of living, and there's
Correct.
6 individuals that are getting no increase, 7, I should say.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest a
Please.
resolution?
Please.
I agree with Mr. Gearbaugh that the merit is not typically in here, and that appears to be a typo. So why don't we make the motion to allow the steps and to allow the 2% and for the sheet to be redone? Because I think there appear to be typos here, so we need to do something.
And that's fine. That would come, however, at a subsequent motion, because right now we're just acknowledging receipt.
Okay.
But no, I think that's a very wise proposition, Mr. Burgoyne, and I would support that. Mr. Gearbaugh, would that be amenable to you?
At this point, we're just acknowledging the receipt of the memo. I'm fine.
Okay. Are there any subsequent questions for Mr. Campbell regarding this first motion? No? Okay, then it's been properly moved to acknowledge receipt of the June 10th, 2014 memo from City Manager Campbell regarding annual non-union staff contracts. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Motion B will be a motion to approve or not to approve the classification and compensation plan grid effective July 1, 2014 for FY 14-15.
Motion to approve according to the statement that I made, which is to approve a 2% increase, and steps were deserved, and that the grid be checked and recalculated.
Did you get that?
Yes.
You want to reread that so Mr. Burgoyne is comfortable with the motion. Give us just 1 second, Mr. Burgoyne, then the clerk is going to reread what she believes your motion to be.
To approve a 2% increase in steps and 2%
warranted.
increase where warranted.
No,
Steps were warranted.
Steps were warranted.
Were warranted,
Yeah,
okay.
to approve it.
And grid to be checked and recalculated.
Correct.
So it actually, that can't quite be the motion, though. It would be to approve the classification and compensation plan grid with the 2% increase, steps where applicable, and to have the grid recalculated for fiscal year 14-15.
That's fine.
Okay.
The merit.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Burgoyne, what about the merit?
Oh, and approve merit where deserved,
Okay.
where applicable.
Okay. Hold on just 1 second, folks. I want to get this motion.
Okay, to approve the classification and compensation plan grid effective July 1st, 2014 for fiscal year 2014-15, to approve a 2% increase in steps where applicable and the grid to be checked and recalculated and
Now you need to put in merit pay. So,
Merit.
so a
With
2%.
merit where applicable also.
Yeah, 2% steps increase where applicable and merit if deserved, and to have the grid recalculated.
Fine.
It's a little confusing. Is everybody clear with what Mr. Burgoyne's motion is? Okay. You're comfortable with that, Mr. Burgoyne? Okay. Is there a second to his motion? Is there a second to his motion?
I would second it for discussion
Okay.
purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Okay. Staff care to comment at all?
And certainly my apologies for not having the appropriate numbers in there, but again, as I said before, this is reflective of the terms in the this last year's approved collective bargaining agreements, 2% in steps, or in their case, longevity, in non-union's case, merit. And I would just, recommendation is to approve that.
Okay. Mr. Burgoyne, do you care to comment at all since it's your motion?
Well, I think this is based on a classification and compensation study showing equity between this community and other communities, and equity amongst positions here in the community. And I think that we have a city goal of trying to be equitable to our non-union employees. And so if we have something for the union employees and we're doing something similar, I think this seems equitable to me. It sounds like other members may have differences in part of this, so I would be just wondering what the views of others are.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Are there additional comments? Mr. Roth?
I was wondering who determines the merit and how much it's going to be, and if merit is considered in the other union contracts. Kind of, I can look at it as a point for us stepping out. That's it. We can keep kind of control with it. So.
Okay. Yep, Mr. Campbell can comment on that. Councilmember Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The merit is based similar, again, as I mentioned, essentially different only in terminology versus collective bargaining units have, sorry, I'm having a brain cramp. Thank you, longevity payments. So they have 4 years, 4 steps, if you will, across the collective bargaining agreement. So after 4 years, they have reached their maximum step. And so once they reach that maximum step, then their longevity payment is based on the number of years that they have. And also the policy is for merit base for the non-union is at the discretion of the city manager, obviously upon approval by city council. But that's very similar amount depending on if you're, once you, in, for non-union, we actually have 9 steps. And as Mr. Burgoyne pointed out, the system is, was in the early 2000s, was Michigan Municipal League came in and reevaluated the current salary system for non-union, and it used to be what I would say vertical, and so it was a number of different job grades and levels with the short term, and they kind of squashed it. Now it's horizontal, so there's less grades but longer number of years for steps. So non-union have 9 years to for steps, and then once they reach that 9th year, after that 9th year, then they qualify, depending how many years they have, they qualify for merit.
Can you share with us what levels, what the different levels of the merit is, if it's the same across to everybody? At this point, I'm not sure what that rate is, how it's determined, other than longevity.
Sure, it's 1,000 or 2,000 based on the years. Trying to think the number of years.
Why don't you come up to the microphone, Ms. Bennett?
I believe in the personnel policy, it's 11 after 11 years. Once you've reached your 9 steps, and you're only getting the cost of living, then at that point, based on an evaluation by the city manager, who determines whether he has the discretion of saying someone does or doesn't get a merit increase. Then after 11 years, it goes from 1,000 from whatever up to 10 years, and then 11 years plus, it goes to $2,000 if you've maxed out on your grade.
On your steps.
Match steps. So technically, you've already got 9 years when you get to the, through your steps if you started at the starting salary.
Yeah, I was here when we invented this process and kind of disagreed with how it was happening back 10 years ago, too, with the $2,000 bonuses that somehow got realigned. My concern here is looking at this.
Just one second, Mr. Gibb. I want to make sure that Mr. Roth didn't have any subsequent questions. Since it was his track.
I'm getting a better understanding,
Okay.
but not totally clear as far as the amounts, and it's coming out now 1,000, 2,000, so you've been very helpful with that.
For this group right here, it's 1,000 or 2,000 if you're done with your grades, depending on your years of service. So it's $1,000 a year up until 10 years, and then on your 11th year, it would be 2,000. But that's solely at the discretion of the city manager, who can decide whether they warrant the merit or not the merit.
And then the 12th year would be another 2,000
No.
plus the cost of living?
Exactly. It maxes out at 2,000, and that is equivalent or comparative to what they are in the union contract.
But that's 2,000 every year plus the cost of living.
But it's always voted on separately, so it's not an automatic. The city council each year can approve the cost of living increase and the merit and steps, or just the cost of living.
And this document that's full of errors is what we're approving?
This document that has only one error that I can see at this point is going to be redone and resubmitted.
The document would be much clearer if you would indicate those who received merit and how much.
Well, this document...
That would be more clarifying.
Right. Well, anyone who is, if you look at the 2013 grade step and you compare it to the 2014 grade step, anyone who hasn't changed, those people are eligible for the merit. And the merit would be the 1,000 or the 2,000. Now, whether they're getting that or not getting that, I wouldn't know, because that's up to the city manager's discretion. This chart is just supposed to reflect the 2,000 salary increase based on the 2013 base. And there's only one correction that I can see in here, and that would be the one, as Mr. Gearbaugh pointed out, for Kathy Korfman.
Yeah, point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Burgoyne, please.
What we're voting on is not the grid that we're looking at.
Correct.
The only thing we're voting on is to allow 2% to allow steps where steps are warranted,
Correct.
and to allow the merit where merit is warranted. Now, my understanding is that you have to reach step 9, then you have to wait 1 year. You don't get it in the year that you reach step 9. You have to wait another year, and then you get your longevity. And I would like to see this called longevity instead of to actually change it, to just call it longevity, because it's supposed to be equitable in parallel to what the unions get.
Right.
And they call it longevity. I really would like to see it called longevity here also.
Yeah.
It would be less confusing.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree. Mr. Roth, if you're concluded, Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have some questions, sir?
No, I just say the information that I'm looking at doesn't agree with what I'm hearing, and I'd like more clarification between what's merit, what's step, and what's cost of living. And I'm looking at individuals which have been at the same step for 3 years now that are not getting increases, and I'm concerned for that. I'm concerned at the individuals that are getting the 5% increases because of step and merit at the very top. So at this point, I'm not supporting this tonight, so.
That's fine, and based on the discussion, it's apparent to me we probably, in the near future, need to probably convene a work meeting to discuss, well, I think Mr. Burgoyne's suggestion is excellent, changing the terminology to longevity. We also need to talk about steps as well, and I think council needs to get a better handle on what our current policy is to determine whether there's value in changing it. I need to add, however, this is the first time I'm hearing about any questions or concerns that people have, and this has been a policy that has been in place for how many years?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh,
I don't
so
know.
I'm-
Quite
A
some
significant
time.
period of time.
Mayor, I'd like to remind.
Hold on, I'm not
Yeah,
finished.
but
I'm
I
not-
want to
no, no,
clarify
I'm not
too.
finished. I'm not finished. When I'm talking, no one else is talking. I extend the same courtesy to everybody at this dais. This is the first time I'm hearing about a desire to change the policy. That's perfectly acceptable, perfectly reasonable, and we'll coordinate a meeting to that effect sometime in the very near future. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Mr. Mayor, and I apologize, you wanted me to speak, and I was trying to speak because you have a tendency to try and override what someone else is speaking. The concern here I had was we can change things, but we don't necessarily have to approve them. I went and did my assessment based on this because looking at this, it doesn't look balanced to me. The other concern I have is there's individuals in here, well, I don't agree with that should receive a step at this point. Some of it was supposed to be based upon the additional duties and responsibilities that you had, not necessarily be automatic. There's concerns that I think we should be doing something more based on performance. I agree that can be changed in the future, but at this point, I'm looking at this, and there were some errors in here, and I'm still concerned there may still be some issues in here. So at this point, I don't know why I'm going to be approving something that we're not got a final version of it.
And that's perfectly acceptable, Mr. Gearbaugh. If you wish to vote against the motion, that is your right. And I certainly understand and sympathize with many of your concerns. I'm just noting for the record, this is the first time hearing about it. So we will work, I will work with staff to schedule a work session on this topic because obviously there needs to be, well, from what I'm hearing at the dais this evening, excuse me, there may need to be some change in policy. Mr. Burgoyne.
I just want to be sure that everybody understands the motion that I made. Mr. Roth, are you perfectly clear, for example?
I understand it, but I'm not very comfortable without having the exact figures.
I do.
But I mean,
believe,
I hate to wait.
Yeah, I do believe that the figures were placed. I thought our treasurer said the figures were placed within the budget, and the budget was approved with sufficient funds for all of these positions at 2% and with a step. And I believe each department, when they make their budget, if they're told to use 2%, and if there's a step, use a step. If there's no step, you don't include the step. I believe that's what she said. The budget already approved does include this.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Let me just add, after conferring with the city manager, and I'm perfectly comfortable with the motion that's been moved by, the amended motion, excuse me, that's been moved by Burgoyne and seconded by Rhodes. If in fact we move forward and vote on it tonight, I would be in favor. However, if council is more comfortable with staff cleaning up this document and coming back to take subsequent action, we can certainly do that at our next meeting, which is on June 30th, prior to the end of this month. So I just want to make that clear for the record. Mr. Rhodes?
I would prefer to table this until our June 30th meeting.
Okay.
A motion to table has to be voted on
Yep.
right away, right?
Yep. Or you can withdraw your motion.
I will withdraw my motion so that we can bring it back on the
Okay.
30th.
And Mr. Rhodes, obviously, as the seconder, you're fine with that? Okay. So that will be removed, and staff, you understand what we're looking for? To come back on the 30th? Okay, very good. All right, well, we'll move on to C then.
No, I don't think we're finished with B, because it was amended a motion. I think we need to disapprove, not approve B, to do it properly.
No, I
Or as
believe that.
point of order.
No, I believe that Mr. Burgoyne withdrew his motion. He's
So
no
there's
longer moving
no
that
motion.
There's no motion on the floor.
I think Mr. Rhodes seconded his amended motion, not that first motion.
But he also retracted his second.
Well, therefore,
There's no motion on the floor.
then there's been nothing done to B.
Correct.
Correct.
And there's where I say it should be voted to be not approved at this point.
No, there's no motion on the floor. The motion has been removed.
Okay, the amended motion was withdrawn.
Yes.
So we have not acted on B.
No one has moved that motion.
Well, that's why I say I think we're not finished, and that's the point of order I'm trying to say. So we're skipping that and going to C.
Well, but I don't think anybody's going to move the motion.
Okay.
Would anybody like to move B? No one would like to move B. There's no motion.
I'd move it to not approve.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? There's no second, that motion dies. We'll move on to C then. This will be a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution as submitted, appointing staff and setting their compensation for a period of July 1, 2014 through July 30th, 2015.
Motion to table because it includes the information.
Yep, very good. Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. It's been moved to table. Can we specify, Mr. Burgoyne, to June 30th?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, is that Mayor Pro Tem Tahar?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Subsequent discussion? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Move on to D. This will be a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution as submitted, appointing city officers for the period of July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2015, and to acknowledge receipt and the reading of ordinance number 744, an ordinance to amend the Saline City Code fixing the current compensation of appointed officials, and to approve and adopt or not adopt said ordinance 744 as submitted.
Motion to table.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Is that a second by Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yes.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in
I
favor?
got a question.
Please.
Why couldn't we table B then? Instead of just skip it?
Well, we could have,
You
Mr. Roth.
could have
I
made that.
was just trying to get things in the right order of thinking of how meetings should be run. Kind of when we withdrew the thing, we were back to nothing, still on B. And then we skipped it and we're tabling the rest.
Well,
Point of clarification on running a meeting. I need to learn something on this.
I don't think that's what happened, Mr. Roth. I think instead of making a motion to table on B, you made a motion to deny, a motion to...
Well, that was only once I was forced into saying that we should do it.
No, you could have tabled.
We can get clarification on this for the next meeting, but my understanding is, well, it's not my understanding. As it relates to motion B, Mr. Burgoyne removed his motion, Mr. Rhodes removed his second. There was a motion made to not approve, that was not seconded, so the motion died. That motion will come back at our subsequent meeting. You are free at any time to move and second a tabling motion. However, following Robert's Rules of Order, what will need to happen on the 30th is for a motion to take from the table prior to entertaining the motion. Again, that's my understanding to date. We can get clarification on both of those points for our next meeting on the 30th. We're on to motion D right now, which has been tabled, or it's been moved to table by Mr. Burgoyne, seconded by Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there any subsequent discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We We move on to E, which is a motion to approve or not to approve the employment contracts with appointed staff and officers for a period of July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2015, and to authorize or not authorize the mayor, city clerk, and city manager to execute employment contracts as submitted.
Motion to table.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Any discussion? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to commission and committee reports. Any commission or committee reports? No? Okay, how about reports or other announcements? Ms. Tahar.
I just would note that the Saline District Library has started its summer reading program, and summer reading is open to people of all ages, not just children. So you can sign up for summer reading at the reference desk anytime the library is open, and there are fabulous prizes, free books. I encourage everyone to participate.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Are there additional announcements? Mr. Rhodes?
Just a notice that the Parks and Trails Funding Group, which is currently scheduled for 5:30 on June the 30th, will need to be rescheduled. I do believe to avoid conflict with our 6 o'clock work meeting that we just set.
Say that again, Mr. Rhodes, I'm sorry.
Parks and Trails Funding Group.
Oh, okay. Can you take care of that? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
There are other reports or announcements? Ms. Seibel-Koenig, please.
Just a quick reminder that the summer music series has started downtown on Thursday nights at 7 p.m.
Very good. Excellent.
Sure.
I'll turn over to Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of you may recall a number of months ago, there was some concern, well, we had some, probably a year or so ago, we had issues with the microphones cutting in and out and that type of thing. And so for the most part, we have those dialed in, if you will. But we continue, especially on the work sessions where we have the one microphone to hand around. Obviously, it's not very efficient to run a meeting and have to hand one microphone. And I mentioned this in a recent communique. Staff is, I was hoping to have it on there for this evening's work session, but we have wireless mics, 4 of them. They're very similar to what this looks like, but they're wireless. And we also have the hearing assisted equipment for folks that they can attach to their ear or that type of thing, their glasses, if you will, or their ear, to help them while they're out in the audience as well. So we'll have 4 of those that people could utilize for the meeting. So those should be online here very shortly.
Very good. Mr. Burgoyne, please.
I've seen in other communities, and I believe Washtenaw County, when they have work meetings, they use their regular mics. And they just have their people at the work meeting come to a table up front. They don't set up a different setup and have to break it down and so forth. So I actually think that we would get the best function by using our mics the way they are and using the mic over there the way it is and so forth. I don't see the value in making the change every time we do a work meeting.
Okay. How does the rest of council feel? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Mr. Rhodes?
Yeah, I suppose that's fine. I kind of like the rectangle where we can sit around and we can see each other better. That kind of helps with communication for those of us who are harder of hearing.
Okay. Ms. Tahar?
Yeah, I prefer the rectangular seating. It's much easier, I think, to have an actual discussion if we can see each other.
Ms. Seibel-Koenig?
I think either
Okay.
is fine.
Mr. Roth, I'm sorry.
I could go either way.
Either way, okay. Mr. Burgoyne?
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of clarity to the public, and not having gaps and not having problems for the public to hear.
Okay. We're still on reports or other announcements. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, just want to let people know that the EdL group is going to have a gathering for Diversity, Pride, and Allies. It's a joint group with the Saline High School Spectrum and Diversity Circle at Mill Pond Park from 5 to 7 p.m. It's a group that's out to help support LGBTQ individuals and working together with community leaders and such, and it's a group that's starting to fire up again, and so that they can hopefully support the Elliott Larson changes and some of that that's coming. So this Friday from 5 to 7.
Are there any other reports or announcements? No? I'm going to actually remove the Washtenaw County Urban County Cooperative Agreement to our next meeting. I want to gather a little bit more information. So actually that'll appear on the agenda on the 30th. It's turning out to be a rather robust meeting agenda. Did you want to talk a little bit about community engagement platform? Excuse me.
Well, I had put in a memo for you guys to see. After looking at Granicus and Mind Mixer, they would both work with our current Facebook and Twitter accounts, but there would be a widget. And instead of trying to have people sign up for yet another community engagement forum or platform, I was thinking that we could try and put out questions onto the Twitter and the Facebook page and see what kind of results we get from those questions, and then we could compile them. And if it was worked out well enough, we wouldn't have to go to a new system. And if a year from now we've got an overwhelming response, we can look at this again. I just wanted to get some idea if that was something that you guys wanted to do, or it would still be the same questions. We would still ask, we would get the information from the city manager, our IT coordinator, Chris, would put it on the website, and then once the deadline had passed, I would collect all the information and put it out for council and for the public to see what the final results were.
Mr. Rhodes, please.
My only concern with that would be I'd like to have a system in place that lets the residents initiate a communication with us and not just respond to things that we put out there. So if we did Facebook, how would they do that?
Well,
They wouldn't be allowed to post, would they?
Yeah, you would be able to post. Yep.
Okay. All right. Takes care of one of my concerns then. Thank you.
Any other thoughts for the city clerk?
I would like to thank her for looking into it. Good suggestion.
I just thought instead of spending money at this point, we could try this first and then go from there.
Mayor,
Mr. Gearbox.
just to tag on to that, could we have an assessment of how C-Click Fix is working and whether or not it's, because it's been, I think, 6 months now, or almost, or whatever.
That's a good suggestion.
I'll just say that I usually get 1 or 2 notifications almost every day.
Yeah, and lately
C-Click Fix,
I've been getting another one, just wanting to know how staff are seeing it and how everyone else is assessing it.
Actually, I need to jump back to this Washtenaw County, or Washtenaw Urban County Cooperative Agreement, my friends. I apologize, but I'm just looking at this letter that I believe was provided in your packet. And it's indicating in the first paragraph that a decision or consensus needs to be developed by June 21st, which of course will be before our next meeting on the 30th. So just to give you a little bit of background, and Mr. Harn, maybe if you'd like to chime in here
Yes.
as well.
Yep.
I believe it was in 2011 that the city decided to participate and be a contributing member to the Washtenaw Urban County Cooperative Agreement, which provides funding, a bit limited funding for our community for really people in need, people who are the most vulnerable. It's a great initiative, and the cost of participating is, well, basically nothing. And Ms. Tahar has been a participating member for some time now. And I should note, and this is again outlined in your in the letter I provided in your packet, with the letter's dated May the 29th, 2014, that if we want to continue to participate, which that's my hope, and I would assume that's Mayor Pro Tem Tahar's hope as well, we don't need to do anything. However, if we want to dissolve our relationship and exit the Washtenaw Urban County Cooperative, we need to inform them in writing by June the 21st. So, Ms. Tahar, do you want to comment maybe a little bit?
Yes, I've been, since last fall, I have been a member of the Urban County Executive Committee. This is normally a position that's held by the Chief Executive Officer of the municipality, but Mayor Merrill is not able to attend, so I attend in his stead. So the Urban County manages a relatively small amount of federal funds that come to Washtenaw County and are administered by the urban county. Federal funds for community development and other purposes. And the amount of money that comes back is based on how many communities participate. So not every municipality or township in the county participates, but most do. So by being there, one of the things we accomplish by being there is we increase the amount of money that comes to Washtenaw County that can be distributed for purposes that the executive committee, the staff proposes executive committee enacts. And so in the past year, when I joined the executive committee, the proposal process had just been completed and recommendations were being made. So this year, community development block grant funds administered or distributed by the urban county were given to the Shelter Association of Washtenaw County, the HIV/AIDS Resource Center Mobile Health Program, and the Interfaith Hospitality Network of Washtenaw County for emergency shelter for children and families experiencing homelessness. So the money is put to really good use. There are great needs in Washtenaw County. We may not be a community that we could, but we might not be a community that would ever directly receive funds from the urban county. We would have to apply, and the application would be reviewed. But I think it's an excellent program, and it's a way to get a little bit of our money back into Washtenaw County from Washington, D.C. That was a personal opinion.
Thank you.
So I hope that we will continue.
Great. Appreciate that report and analysis. That was excellent, Mayor Pro Tem Tar. Mr. Rhodes?
I support continuing on with this agreement, but I did have a question. Do you know how much money our population has brought into the county?
I do not know that.
We can get you that statistic.
Okay, and I'm assuming that none of it has come back to us at this point?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Burgoyne, did you have a question, sir?
No, I just support it.
Good, okay. Is there any objection to proceeding and continuing our relationship? No? Okay, excellent, very good. Anything else this evening? No? Okay, then our next meetings, excuse me, we're not to that point yet. We are to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess, thank you very much for addressing those hard of hearing. I have lost most of my hearing in my left ear. The one thing, as far as at your benches, it's more of a Last Supper type of thing that allows us inclusion. When you go around the chair or the table, it appears to be exclusion. And I do appreciate being able to see you. I know it's more comfortable to each other, but as far as it's kind of like we're on the outside. The other thing is, I'd like to have you, if you would also, with the salaries, put the percentage of benefits that are awarded to. I think at one time it was over 30%. I don't know what it is now, but if you could also address what the percentages is on top of the proposed wages. The other thing is storms. We've been very fortunate that we've not had a problem with storms, but I was hoping maybe the police chief or the fire chief could go again on Channel 18 or something. And also, if we could tell the public where, in case of a storm, they could go in case of emergency. Because it's been hit a lot of places, and we've been fortunate. But it is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. And I think the idea about getting the police chief and fire chief on Channel 18 to talk about emergency services is a good idea, doing a PSA or public service announcement. So we can work to make sure that that is coordinated. Thank you for your comments. Are there additional citizen comments?
Mr.
Oh, I'm
Mayor?
sorry, Mr. Burgoyne?
One more comment. In terms of the grid that we're getting back on the salaries and wages, I would like it to be uniform the way it was in the past and kept that way. In terms of other costs and so forth, maybe we can be briefed on that, but I would like the forms themselves to be uniform from year to year to year.
Very good. Well, if there's nothing else, upcoming meetings, we have a special meeting with the Saline Main Street and Chamber of Commerce to talk about economic development and business attraction and retention. Excuse me, next Monday at 7 p.m. I know some of the topics that will be discussed are the LDFA TIFA task force, the fact that the Chamber got some grant money and ways that they're going to utilize that, and also our Code and Ordinance Review Task Force. If you have other ideas, please email me. Then we have a special work meeting and regular meeting beginning at 6 p.m. on the 30th. First to talk about the Monroe Street property, and then to talk about, well, there'll be a number of things on the regular agenda. Then we have our next regular council meeting at 7:30 p.m. on the 7th, a work meeting on the 21st to discuss streetscape, and then a regular meeting at 7:30. There are no absences this evening, so I would seek a motion to adjourn at 9:23 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is